And it's really great for me to be back in New York City among so many friends and colleagues at World Trade Week. I've been in the U.S. International Trade Commission for 4 years, and anytime we have a hearing, anytime we're thinking about trade, I'm always thinking back to New York City, because the 9 years I spent at the Port Authority was when I got a chance, thanks to Herbert Weed, to work with a lot of small companies, got to hear about their trade barriers, got to study how trade agreements were affecting this region. And even though Mr. Laramie pointed out that we import here more goods than we do, we export. When you take into account services, I think this picture is probably quite different. And so we really shouldn't forget that. So anyway, I was also very excited when the U.S. Trade Representative asked us last year to do a study on SME exports. Because I thought back to World Trade Week, and I thought back to these events that I used to come to all the time, and of all the companies that were here, and all the firms, and all the organizations that were here helping them. Now, our study found out, one of the things we found out was that SMEs account for about 30% of the goods exports from the U.S. At least that's what they export directly. When you look at what they export through, say, larger firms, maybe they sell them components, or the larger firm actually exports the goods for them, you actually get 40%. So actually, SMEs are contributing much more to U.S. exports than most people had thought before. And also, it's interesting, SMEs that export have higher revenues, higher labor productivity, and faster revenue growth than SMEs that don't export. So that should be a tip. Now, large firms, basically have affiliates overseas, and they service their overseas clients through them. For many SMEs, they have to service their overseas clients directly. And that, presents extra challenges for them. Now, it's interesting, while SMEs and large firms both export a lot to Canada and Mexico, SMEs seem to have a higher percentage of their goods going to Israel, Hong Kong, and Switzerland than do larger firms. And I was sort of wondering why. Now, we don't have a clear answer to this, but I happen to think that those markets are particularly open and have easy access. And also, they seem to demand highly specialized, high value-added products, things that companies in this region produce. Now, of course, as I mentioned, services exports are important, and SMEs play an important role in U.S. services exports. Actually, 38% of the U.S. cross-border services are generated by SMEs. And that's, as you know, a higher percentage than the direct exports of goods. And of course, technology services are the engines that drive future growth in the U.S. And SMEs are particularly important and play a particularly important role in information services, such as software publishing, motion pictures, video distribution, telecommunication services. They also play an important role in exports of portfolio management services, architectural, engineering, and services related to construction trades, management, scientific and technology consulting services. Just think about this region. What are the things that people know how to do in this area? These are all the things that I think SMEs, that there are a lot of SMEs in the New York, New Jersey region that are good in these sectors. And those are the ones where we see the highest potential for SMEs. Now, of course, like large firms, SMEs face trade barriers in foreign markets, and they probably have more trouble dealing with those than, say, a large firm would. These things like limited access to capital, complex government regulations, paperwork, things like that, language and cultural barriers. But that's why we have so many organizations here who work with small to medium-sized companies, because those are the groups that can help them overcome these barriers. Now, SMEs, their exports have seemed to be growing by the same rate as large firms, but it seems like it's more often that export growth comes from new market entrants, whereas you have large firms who are their growth in exports comes from firms that are already doing it. So that means that while we must continue to help the firms that are already exporting, It is particularly important if we want to achieve the U.S. export goals for the U.S. of getting more and more new SMEs into the export market, because most of the growth seems to come from the new entrants. So another challenge out there for you. Now I'd like to make, we were asked by USTR to take a look at the help that's given to SMEs in Europe compared to the help that's given to the SMEs here. Now, while U.S. SMEs seem to receive less in terms of export financing, less support in terms of overseas representation and financial support for trade fairs than do their counterparts in Europe, there is a wider range of support than is often available in Europe for things like pre-export financing, short-term credit, and things like that, which are particularly beneficial. Also, culturally, U.S. SMEs are often less reliant on government and trade associations for support than EU SMEs. So in a sense, getting them maybe to sort of change that, they also means that you've got firms who are willing to go out there to venture into a new market. A couple of strategies that came from our study for SMEs. Of course, working with, and these are things that you probably already know, the idea of groups combining together, SMEs combining together to tackle a particular market. Firms in the same industry should think about that. Of course, working with larger companies, brokers, or agents, another thing that really can help. Larger companies can provide, particularly in that manufacturing, larger economy of scales, can provide associates, provide services that help companies establish new business relationships. And brokers and agents can help SMEs match their products with the broker firms overseas. And I can't help from thinking about, particularly when we're thinking in this port area, the importance of logistics services and of having partners who can help you overcome logistics problems. And of course, there are the federal and state government agencies that help exporters, and I think we really should be encouraging small firms to take greater advantage of those. And then there are, of course, the host of new trade agreements that have been signed in the last 10 years that do provide real economic opportunities for firms. These are things we at the ITC are always studying. Now, I've often said, if you can succeed in the New York market, you can succeed anywhere. Given the strong language and cultural connections that many people here have with overseas, better able to understand export markets, foreign government regulations, and can probably more easily find the right niche in the foreign market. They also have the ability to market their services and products in the appropriate languages that their customers overseas might speak. Also, there's a high concentration of venture capitalists in this area. So I guess the bottom line, the president has set a goal of doubling exports. The New York, New Jersey region is probably better equipped than most parts of this country to actually help us achieve that goal. And I think our study has tried to give you some ideas of why that is true. And then I'll lastly say to those of you who have been helping small and medium-sized companies, the port authorities, the state export promotion agencies, the regional chamber of commerce, all those organizations which this area is so rich with, keep up the good work, because it will make a difference. Thank you.
For WWW Manhattan CCTV.